Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So here I want to cover the effects of dying in Neverwinter and how to mitigate them. They're actually pretty serious. They affect your damage and your hit points, which, yeah, you rely on a lot to be effective. The more hit points you have, the less likely you're gonna die. The more damage you have, you can kill everything quicker, get through the content a whole lot faster. Now every time you do go and die, that's by losing all of your hit points, you will be given the opportunity to get revived. So you'll be in this down state. 15 seconds, somebody can revive you by interacting with your body and resurrecting you. You can call for help with this button, you could release here, or you could use a scroll of life and revive. However, every time you do so, you will receive revive sickness, and this lasts you 5 minutes. Now you might go and die again before that 5 minutes is over, and yes, you will once again have the opportunity to revive. Again, somebody can interact to pick you up, or you can use a scroll, or you have the option to release. You can even see what actually killed you. Here we can, again, revive. But we now have 2 revive sickness. What this exactly means is every time we have one of these revive sickness effects, negative conditions called debuffs, our maximum hit points and our damage is reduced. And so you basically become weaker and weaker every time you get revived. So it's not something you want to do. Additionally, you can only die so many times. You can get 5 of these revive sickness stacks before you just become perma-dead the next time you die. So once you're on 5, don't die again or you're out of the fight entirely. You will be reset to your nearest campfire. So you'll die here, and if you do get revived again, you do have the opportunity to escape from a fight or so on. Generally, you will get immunity frames within the first second or so. I mean, we didn't obtain any right here. I'm not sure why. There seems to be some randomness with the immunity frames where you can just end up not getting any, or you end up with here a few seconds and it's gone. You get the icon for it. And sometimes there's damage which will ignore that and you might die anyway. Just make sure you aren't reviving when you're in the middle of a red zone or something. You want to be safe. And that's why in most cases people will not use the mass scrolls of life, because you can end up reviving teammates and having them dead. Now we got to 5 of these revive sickness stacks and we're now perma-dead. We did not get the opportunity to revive. So we have to release. Again, you'll end up right next to your nearest campfire. Just be aware to get rid of this revive sickness, no matter how many stacks you have, you very simply need to walk into the perimeter of a campfire, or you just wait out the full 5 minutes, which you will see people doing in the Defense of the Moon Dancer trial. So you go in there and bam, they're all gone. Additionally, if you do not have VIP, you will end up with an injury here. You do have the opportunity to cure the injury with an injury kit. You can see when you right click on it there. Or you can stand in a campfire and after 30 seconds, one of your injuries will be cleansed. If we say keep this injury, which reduces our movement speed, die again, we will obtain basically another injury or an enhanced, a second level of the same injury, like our movement speed, our legs would be injured even more, be a severe injury, and we'd have even lower movement speed. Injuries, yeah. If you have VIP, it will not be a problem. You immediately get immunity on them, although you do have to actually be level 7 of VIP. That's surprising. All the way until then, and then you get immunity. So you might have to be getting those kits. Injury kits, only going to cost you a bit of silver. You can get divine ones from events and such. Or again, you just wait 30 seconds in a campfire. It's annoying, inconvenient. Usually you'll have the time to wait though. But ultimately, how impactful is that revive sickness? How concerned should you be about it? Well, it's actually pretty potent. You can see exactly on the table here. So your base is of course a 0% loss. You will have your full damage, full hit points. But after 1 death, you now have 10% less damage and 9.9% less hit points. The second death, that goes to 19% less damage, 19.8% less hit points. And you can see that goes all the way down to 5 deaths. You have a loss of nearly 41% damage and a hit point loss of nearly 50%. It's pretty brutal. What happens then in certain content is you might die one time and end up in a death spiral where you'll keep dying to a certain mechanic over and over until you're out. So you have very limited time left. You'll find that in, for example, the Dungeon Master Temple of the Spider, the second boss, you have like a hit that everybody takes unavoidably. And that hit is a lot of damage depending on your hit points. And you might very well, after you die once, continually die to it because of the amount of hit points you've lost from that revive sickness. However, there is a way to mitigate this, and it revolves around boons. And you need to be in a guild that has that boon, and it's called Revive Sickness. You slot this in, and those effects are halved. It's really useful, and without it, I wouldn't really do master content. You really need that to mitigate these effects. Sometimes you just can't help dying. Somebody else will make a mistake and get you killed, and that's just not really your fault. Not everybody's perfect. You are going to make mistakes, and there are plenty of mistakes you can make that are going to kill other people. So sometimes it just can't be helped. And so you really need the Revive Sickness boon to literally half the effects of each of those Revive Sickness stacks you get, those death effects. So here you would just have 23% less damage and 25% less hit points versus a whopping 41% less damage and 50% less hit points. The hit points, especially when you're trying to survive in master content, where you have damage hits which are unavoidable. They're like a mitigation check, so everybody needs to use abilities to survive that attack. You get that in Tower of the Mad Mage, you get that in Zariel, and you also get that in Xemnit's Reliquary. A big hit that everybody needs to survive. It doesn't matter where you are on the platform, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get hit by it, and you have to tank it. You have to have enough hit points combined with enough mitigation from everybody else. So as soon as you end up in a death loop, you die to one mechanic from some silly mistake, you might die to the next one, and then you're dying to these mechanics that you can't avoid. And then you just spiral down and you end up dead. So Revive Sickness boon is really important to mitigate, especially the hit points. You only lose 25% versus a whopping 50%. Like, imagine you're only on half your hit points versus without that. So those are the serious effects of dying within Neverwinter. Again, you can only revive 5 times before you're out. That's the leeway we get, and each time we die, our damage is reduced and our hit points are reduced. And you can mitigate that half basically with the Revive Sickness boon from being in the correct guild, which will have the temple with the boon here, Revive Sickness. And you of course want to have that temple on 1000 item level, which means it's at its maximum effect. Now those of you who are healers, you might wonder, what's up with Revive Sickness then? I'm a healer, I'm just healing, I don't care about damage. You're actually pretty lucky. Revive Sickness, the effect of dying, the debuff, does not affect heals. A healer can die 5 times and will still be able to heal their entire party to the full extent as they would as if they had never died. But you will be vulnerable, again, due to the hit point loss. However, as a result of dying, you will still lose your buff food, so that will also affect healers, like your Flask of Potency and your Squash Soup. Some will be special and will persist through death. It'll say it in the description, although guild food doesn't say that, and that does persist through death. For example, I can suicide here, and you can see I no longer have the buffs of Flask of Potency and Squash Soup, but I do of my elixir and guild food. That's why you will always see people reapplying these after they have died, at least in master content, where you need that effectiveness for success. If you're just starting this game, yeah, you're going to struggle with those freaking annoying injuries. But you only get an injury when you reset back to a campfire. So you do have the opportunity to just wait at that campfire 30 seconds and it'll be gone. If you want to be hasty or you don't want to have your team wait for you, then you do have the opportunity to use injury kits, which you'll find everywhere dotted around at little vendors like this guy right over here. He will sell me injury kits. Again, you'll see that there just for 30 silver. If you're short on gold, recommend looking up how to craft that. It's very easy to set up and just generate infinite gold. Just takes a bit of time. Now, you might be curious about like Scrolls of Life and Scrolls of Mass Life. Again, the reason you want to use Scrolls of Life and not the Mass Scrolls is particularly in endgame content. Because if we all die, let's say everybody's dead, somebody might use a Mass Scroll and everybody else might use a Scroll of Life. The problem that happens here is if you go and click revive at the same time somebody else does with their scroll, you end up giving that person 2 skulls, 2 revive sickness conditions rather than just 1. So there's a bug with that. I don't like it, and you just need to be aware of it. And generally, we just ban Scrolls of Mass Life. Nobody uses them. The Scrolls of Life are cheaper anyway. You generally get them from trade bars right here, consumable section. 8 for these and 10 for these. So just don't get the Scrolls of Mass Life. You might think you're helping, but you're usually not. At least in endgame. In lower dungeons, people might not scroll at all. You can use a Scroll of Mass Life from your inventory and revive somebody if they're down even though you're not, and rather than going to pick them up. That can be useful. And additionally, if you're like super new and you want a combat enchantment, you can use a soul shield here. Just run it on green. You don't even need it on an upgraded version. It will always have the effect of reviving you. You might die in a pack of enemies, but the soul shield will immediately get you back up. You'll see this right here. We die and we're straight away back up. We gain that immunity for a few seconds and then, yeah, we're good. But we obtain the revive sickness. So not ideal that we died in the first place. And combat enchantments, once you can get them leveled up, you're better off using one that you can actually make use of to increase your effectiveness. Because a soul shield's only going to increase your damage reduction and then just have that revive effect. You ideally just don't want to die in the first place. And if you did die, you could use a scroll. That's what endgame players use. You should have some master ammo spare to use scrolls. Outside of master content, absolutely feel free to use a soul shield on green. It'll be just as good. But when you're going to min-max, you ideally again want something, especially as a damage dealer, it's going to increase your damage by 10%, and it's going to give you a bunch of stats there with the lightning flash as well, rather than just that utility of automatically reviving, which you could just use a scroll to do anyway. And your, again, green soul shield is going to do exactly the same as the mythic one, just isn't going to heal you as much. You could just use a potion then after. You can get the green one, I believe, just here, but I wouldn't get it here. You can save yourself the Astro Diamonds and just do Acquisitions Incorporated. You can see it's still going to revive you every 60 seconds. Once you do Acquisitions Incorporated, you will get a pack after you've done Temple Intrusion, which will automatically give you a combat enchantment, and you could get that green soul shield to have the automatic revive. Can be nice rather than relying on somebody to go and revive you, especially if you're one of those people who feels ashamed of dying and you'll want to scroll immediately so that nobody noticed or something. Anyway, hopefully this is somewhat insightful. The conditions of dying are pretty severe, especially on a damage dealer and a tank who relies on their damage and their hit points. But again, you can mitigate that by nearly a half with the revive sickness boon from being in the right guild. Very important for endgame players. A massive thank you again to all these channel members for their added support. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.